Letter number 2, 2.0, The Anatomy of the Ghosting. A forensic study of what happens inside the nervous system when unresolved architecture keeps touching the field. How does a person preserve a dignity when direct confrontation empowers dysfunction, but silence can feel like complicity and self erasure? Friday, May 22nd, 2026. After you wrote I sent I exist back in June 2025, over a year post the initial rupture in April 2024, you received a response of flying daggers. The closing sentence, can you let me move on? First of all, can I let you do anything? Question mark, exclamation point, my ass. I have no jurisdiction, power, or responsibility over anyone but myself and partially my son. So, no, I can't fucking let you move on, even if I wanted to. You either move on or you don't. You alone do that. All your parts in there, the good and the bad, the light and the shadow, the awareness and the wound, the trauma, the coping and protective mechanisms, the desires, the pain, all of that fucking sits down in your internal conference room and you all fucking decide for yourself. I am so fucking enraged how people offload all of their responsibility for feeling anything to other people. The place we have landed as a collective requires absolutely zero self accountability. And when you finally wake up and see the extent of what that means, for me, what arises is an unbelievable amount of rage. Because you, the old Lutz 1.0, has been so thoroughly conditioned and brainwashed and traumatized over and over again to absorb responsibility for other people's emotional state, which ultimately left you to burn through yourself so completely it felt you were burning not just this particular lifetime of compliance, but all of the compliance of every female in your lineage all the way to where this bullshit began. And now, when we receive anything with even a touch of that offloading frequency, I, Lutz 1.88 roughly, have zero tolerance. The baseline that has been established has zero tolerance for offloading anything on anyone. I'm still trying to navigate how to live in this world with that. And I'm sure there is a smart ass out there that has some high ground counter argument as to how I need to look at myself to hold it together or stop running the victim Olympics or whatever fucking bullshit they dig up and feel justified to use in order to not look at themselves. It is fucking unbelievable to what lengths people go to avoid looking at themselves in any way. Because of what? Having a dark side makes you a bad person? No, having a dark side, spoiler alert, everybody has one, makes you human. And as Mel likes to remind me, you did not make the mess, but you are responsible for cleaning it up. Otherwise, you will spill it all over everybody else, which is literally what pretty much everyone is doing in to whatever degree. It's interesting how everything touches everything and how it ripples through out to every area of our lives. And until we are willing to look at the things we deem toxic, dark, cruel, twisted, inappropriate, and whatever else falls into that category, we will continue to create a shared reality of hypocrisy, which, if you look around anywhere, is exactly where we are. Okay, back to can you let me move on? Hold on, coffee break. Mm. Okay, back to can you let me move on? I literally cannot not include the question mark and the exclamation point. Is it a question? Is it a request? Is it a demand? Is it all of it at once? The level of absurdity, the level of hypocrisy and distortion, and what rises through me when I feel around all this continues to be unreal. However, that is not even the issue. Not even close. The issue is what comes next. No further emails, no calls, no direct interference, none. Roots 1.0 turn inward instead. Somewhere in there, you established and entered the self awareness lab. You continue to burn and dismantle. You reconstructed my nervous system, my identity, and my understanding of love, trauma, grief, and sovereignty from the ground up. We did not simply survive the wreckage. While you burned, I became someone new inside of it, which is precisely why the ongoing telemetry registering on my digital perimeter feels less like emotional devastation, which was your experience, and more again like watching a live action episode of The Boys unfold inside the ruins of my former life. He continues to choose silence. His replacement timeline doesn't. Last week, a familiar pattern emerged. Alike, data locked, later vanished. 1 month prior to that, a follow, data locked, then an unfollow, a subtle but measurable disturbance, a signal, a ghost ping. The exact woman positioned inside the life I was instructed to release appears, at minimum, intermittently present within my public digital field. I wish I could tell you I am above this, unaffected. And it's interesting because while part of me continues to shake my head at the level of absurdity I am witnessing, the other part of me is deeply fucking enraged that the person occupying the life I was told to release appears unable to fully leave my digital perimeter alone. And as it happens, precisely in this exact paradox is where the work lies. Here is where the courage and bravery shows up. This is the arena Brené Brown talks about. This is where tears, scream, blood, and sweat are the currency. This is where the internal work takes place. This is where the dismantling and burning to ashes happens. This is where the new baseline is laid, forged, and held. My initial reaction and immediate spiral went like this: sensation as if a sharp, cold blade entered my heart, changing into a fist, one inside my chest, squeezing, while burning like the sun's surface. Then the words flooded in. Fuck. Here she is again. Fuck. The fuck can't she leave me alone? What the fuck does she want? Is this an accident? Is she doing this on purpose? What does it mean? Does he know? Yes, question mark and an exclamation point. Immediate deployment of trauma recovery tools. Credit here must go to Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle, whose IG posts have been fucking life saving. Pause, blink, breathe. Gently, containing the perimeter of the possibly forming collapse into unworthiness, abandonment, and despair. There is countless evidence for the amount of times this failed in the past. Once that bubble is in place, anything goes. The mind is let completely loose. The rage is allowed to scream, imagine all the horrific behaviors and outcomes, including people dying or me dying. All of the darkness is allowed and it's contained and held without judgment and with love. By the way, it's hard as fuck to watch yourself plan and execute revenge along with the aftermath of what that would leave behind, how ML would be affected, etc., etc., even just inside of your own head. It is fucking brutal. It is brutal. Also, at least for me, it's the only way to release it, move through it, free myself from any of the remaining hooks that may still be in there, trying to abandon the current baseline and pull me back into you, Lutz 1.0 alone. This part of the process can take anywhere between a couple hours to a couple days. No outward actions allowed while this process is taking place. Of course, the first thing I wanted to do was to send the screenshots to him and demand for him to contain his quote, and regardless of whatever uninformed opinions you have of my wife, I love her. Lots of people love her. She is a kind and caring person, end quote. Demand for him to contain his kind and caring wife. Let's be clinically precise here. Running covert digital reconnaissance on the woman whose reality was obliterated to make room for yours is not the behavior of a kind and caring system. It is the behavior of a deeply insecure architecture. I do not know whether these incidents are accidental. I do not know whether they are deliberate. The lab has collected similar data sets of intentional pings in the past. Still, as an attempt to remain as objective as possible, I do not know whether these pings are curiosity, insecurity, surveillance, provocation, or meaningless algorithmic slips. To claim certainty would be projection. And yet, while motive remains unknown, impact does not. Because, again, what's fascinating is less the ping itself and more the architecture surrounding it. The irony is staggering. A woman publicly framed within the narrative of kind and care does not typically need to repeatedly graze the perimeter of her husband's predecessor. A truly secure system rarely conducts reconnaissance on a displaced timeline. And this is again where the entire thing begins to resemble vault international public relations management. Curated optics, carefully staged appearances, polished narrative constructions, all while the subtle fractures leak beneath the surface. Observing it feels surreal, like watching a corporation or a government desperately market moral superiority while collateral damage still stains the walls. Like seeing glossy replacement architecture positioned in spaces once profoundly alive with different memories, different bodies, different truths. And most disorienting of all, the insistence that the rewritten version is cleaner than the one that came before. And yet, here is where human dignity complicates philosophy, because silence, while sovereign, can also feel unjust. There is a unique psychological tension in watching people who benefited from your erasure potentially continue to gather information from your field while you remain silent. At times, silence can feel like peace, and at times, silence can feel less like peace and more like subsidizing their comfort. This is the true complexity, not whether to react, but how to preserve dignity when confrontation empowers dysfunction, yet silence can feel like complicity in your own diminishing. This is where most healing rhetoric becomes too simplistic, because real sovereignty is not emotional numbness. It is not spiritual bypass. It is not pretending the body does not register the absurdity. I'm not beyond the micro trigger. I am not above the momentary somatic spike. I am human. I notice, I feel, I process. However, sovereignty is not the absence of reaction. Sovereignty is the conscious governance of it. What ultimately matters is not the intent itself, but the undeniable mechanical action. A system from a timeline that demanded my erasure is now actively surveilling my survival. So, what remains? When dealing with a digital orbiter, the most mechanically sound option is to ignore it. But here's the important somatic friction. Ignoring it is often framed as spiritual transcendence, yet, in the 3D reality of a human nervous system, silence can feel like subsidizing injustice. There is a profound tension between holding a higher perspective and preserving basic human dignity. When you stay silent, it feels like they are benefiting from your restraint. It feels like your lack of reaction is funding their comfort, allowing them to trespass in your field without ever paying the toll of accountability. This is where the physics of request becomes essential. If I confront, I validate. If I demand, I transact. If I say stop, I place my peace in the hands of the very system I refuse to energetically fund. A request in this context becomes jurisdictional surrender. And we did not survive annihilation to hand over governance of my nervous system now. Not to anybody, and most definitely not to her. What's left? Witnessing, awareness, documentation, discernment, a refusal to collapse, a refusal to shrink, a refusal to confuse silence with powerlessness. Because silence, when consciously chosen, does not have to mean submission. It can mean strategic non participation. It is refusing to provide emotional capital to systems still attempting to stabilize themselves through external monitoring. The undeniable truth the current baseline holds: there is no longer a need to beg to be seen, to fight for the legitimacy of experienced pain, to interrupt my own becoming to manage someone else's narrative. I will not alter my output. I will not abandon my public voice. I will not contort my existence to accommodate the discomfort of those who build new narratives atop old ruins. I do not need to collapse into silence to prove I'm healing, nor do I need to react to prove my existence. Some realities speak for themselves. In my opinion, it is not possible to build a structurally sound house on top of a ghost, and the ghost pinks just may be the tremors proving that the foundation is cracking. Some systems leak on their own. And so, and some people, no matter how thoroughly erased, remain undeniable.